This is Decoding Superhuman with your host, Boomer Anderson.
This podcast is brought to you by ButcherBox. I always love my trips back to the motherland. In case you couldn't guess by the accent, that's the United States. Let's acknowledge a problem here. And it's getting a little bit better, but the food in the US is sometimes questionable in quality. 97% of the beef for sale in the US is grain-fed, processed in feedlot. Feedlot cattle are fed antibiotics, hormones, corn, soy, and sometimes even animal byproducts. And did I forget to mention candy? Sounds kind of gross. As a result, you get a fatty piece of meat tainted with antibiotics and hormones. That's not really healthy. So what's a superhuman to do? The answer is ButcherBox. ButcherBox sells only the highest quality, 100% grass-fed, grass-finished beef, free-range chicken, that's organic, and heritage breed pork. For $129 a month, you get 8 to 11 pounds of high-quality meat. That's enough for 20 to 28 individual meals at around 6 ounces. That's 170 grams per meal. ButcherBox is what I recommend to my parents, so you know I'm a fan. You get the highest quality meats delivered direct to your door. No two boxes are the same. Each month, you get a new curated experience. This means only the best. New cuts of meat and even the recipe cards. It's what I like to call a flexible subscription service. You can change it to every other month or cancel it at any time. Damn, I'm hungry just thinking about this. Do you want to give it a try? Are you hungry like me? Go to www.butcherbox.com/boomer, as in my name. That's BUTCHERBOX/BOOMER. It's been a while since I spelled my name, but go there and sign up right now. Or better yet, wait until the podcast is over and sign up. And if you do, you'll get $10 off your first order and some free bacon. Yes, I said bacon. Hey guys, it's Boomer Anderson here, your host of the Decoding Superhuman podcast. The mission with this podcast is to explore a vast world of health. We go all the way out to the fringes and back to the mainstream, separating true from false and delivering tidbits or bite-sized pieces of information which you can use in your everyday life to perform better. Today is a bit of a gut check. You'll get that really bad joke in just a second. One of the topics I get asked most about is testing. Lately, this has been a lot about microbiome testing. My guest is Richard Lin, the CEO of Thryve. That's Thryve. Thryve is a microbiome genomics and probiotic therapeutics company with an end goal of indexing the entire world's microbes to improve health and wellness. Richard started Thryve after antibiotic overuse, like so many of us. He has made it his mission to learn about the microbiome to improve the overall human condition. By starting Thryve, Richard's goal is to provide a platform where citizen scientists, academic researchers, government institutions, and pharmaceutical companies can come together and halt the progression of microbiome-related diseases. Richard has been featured in MIT Technology Review, CFO Magazine, Small Business Reviews, Medscape, Health 2.0, eHealth Radio, Silicon Valley Business Journal, and a few others, including a Brazilian documentary. This conversation is a bit of a deep dive into microbiome testing. Specifically, we start with what is the microbiome? Why should people test it? We talk about the pluses and minuses of different testing techniques. I get to ask one of my favorite questions, which is the testing accurate? And what sets Thryve specifically apart from the rest? The show notes for this one can be found at decodingsuperhuman.com/Thryve. That's Thryve. If you stick around until the end, Richard gives a fat discount for you to get started with Thryve today. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Richard Lin. Richard, welcome to the show.
Boomer, thanks for having me.
I know in our health consulting business, we get so many questions. And one of the areas that consistently comes up is this testing, right? And specifically microbiome testing. So what do I want to do? I want to have an expert on to talk about, exactly some of these questions and clear up any sort of gray areas we have. So Richard, thanks again for coming on today.
Absolutely. Well, Boomer, thanks for having me. And hey to everyone in the audience. Thanks for listening. So just a quick background. I'm Richard, the CEO of Thryve. And what we do is we help people learn about the microbes inside their body to improve their health. And we also include, as our product, a monthly subscription that includes gut microbiome testing that looks at thousands of species of bacteria in your body, as well as sending personalized probiotics to our customers. So.
That's awesome, Richard. Before we delve into all of those really interesting things you brought up, perhaps let's take it high level here and talk about, what is microbiome testing and why should people actually care?
Yeah, that's a great question. So before we go into microbiome testing, we may need to describe what the microbiome is for some people in the audience.
That would probably be a good start, right?
Sure. So the microbiome is essentially the bacteria, yeast, and viruses that reside inside and outside the human body. And so these microbes are all over our bodies, in our gut, in our mouth, on our skin. And science has been showing that they've been correlated with a lot of different types of diseases. So diseases such as Parkinson's, depression, anxiety, obesity, eczema, irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease, and many more. And so the microbiome is it's a very interesting space because we're making so many discoveries on how these microbes interact with us and how they actually affect our health. And the goal, and the hope for the future is that we'll be able to profile everybody and be able to figure out what kind of interventions we can take to help prevent disease. And so with microbiome testing at this current stage, we look at 16S ribosomal RNA, essentially the RNA of all the bacteria, and that tells us, helps us see about a lot of different species of bacteria in the body. Whereas before, when we were testing bacteria on a petri dish, kind of the traditional way, there's only so many species you could pick up because most bacteria are anaerobic. So what that means is when they're exposed to oxygen, they die. But with this new next generation sequencing technology, with the microbiome testing, we can actually pick up thousands of species that we normally could not see. And so just within the past couple of years, we've been seeing, wow, there's this whole invisible world of microbes, but we're just starting to figure out how they all interact with us and affect our health.
Yeah, it's amazing how much research has come out about this whole gut health connection and how much, frankly, attention it's gotten lately. So you're in a hot space, that's for sure. Now, okay, specifically when we talk about microbiomes, when it relates to Thryve and what you do, we're talking about the gut microbiome, right? We're not going to be talking about anything outside of that.
So with Thryve, we currently test for the gut microbiome through a small piece of feces off the toilet paper. But we are also looking in different. Yeah, we're talking about poop here, guys. But we're potentially also looking in other parts of the body, like the skin and oral microbiome. We just currently do not have that offering, so we'll probably stick to the gut for now.
Yeah, understand. Got to go with your gut, right? Wow, I'm full of really bad puns today.
I've heard that pun one too many times, man. That's kidding.
I mean, if you're in this field, I can imagine it coming.
It happens.
A lot. Okay. Now, for the uninitiated, how new is this field? Because a lot of the people listening may have, familiarity with genetics, genetic testing, or even, blood tests. But how new is the microbiome testing field? And, how much research is going into each of these bacteria?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we've known about bacteria for, hundreds of years. But in terms of kind of microbiome research, it's relatively new. So just to give you some stats, if you look up kind of microbiome in PubMed, there's about 35,000 published microbiome research articles. Contrast that to genetics, which has about 3.5 million studies. So that's 100x, 100 times more studies in genetics. And yeah, so it's a much larger thing. But the interesting thing about the microbiome is if you look at the trend of, say, for instance, genetics, when the Human Genome Project was launched in 2003, it's only grown about 3% year over year in terms of published research. But if you look at microbiome and the Human Microbiome Project, when it was launched in 2008, it's been growing about 35% year over year. And so even though we're kind of early in the microbiome research and science, the pace of how fast it's growing is pretty staggering. And I
So
count
we're
that
about
to
9 years into the microbiome research. That's right.
Yeah, and it's growing very quickly, and it's interesting because it's two things. Well, the first thing is just the microbiome is it's so rich in data, and there's so much insights we're figuring out about how it's related to disease. And the reason why we're able to do that is because the technology has scaled so quickly. So if you actually look at first strand of human DNA, costs roughly $300 million to sequence. That same technology can be brought to your door for under $100 to sequence the microbiome. And it's because sequencing technology is actually scaled faster than Moore's law. And so the cost of sequencing a whole genome has gone down tremendously. And that allows scientists to be able to make these discoveries much quicker.
Yeah, I think it's funny because you see some of these whole genome sequencing companies advertising for $2,000 plus. And my belief is that it's not going to be too long till we're going to get under $500. And I think I've actually seen a company in Europe advertise it for under 500 euros. So, yeah. I mean, my hope is that we're going to be able to individualize health through companies like yourself, as well as whole genome sequencing. Excuse me, the English. But for under $500. And think about how much money that would save, how much time that would save people if they're able to make the right decisions just for them. But sorry, I digress.
What we're saying is that it's very early, but there's a lot of insights, and we're figuring out how kind of the best way to kind of shift this microbiome, and based on research, is through diet. And through just kind of increasing fibrous intake of different types of vegetables and fruits and things like that. And so I think generally the space is pretty new, but there's a lot of actions you can take away from kind of the research that's coming out. So.
Do you mind if we take just a second and talk a little bit about the different bacterias that one may get if you go out and do the Thryve gut tester kit, and what kind of information we can tell based on those bacteria?
Yes. So with Thryve's testing kit, we pick up the thousands of species of bacteria in your gut. We also categorize those bacteria. So based on if they fit under the probiotics, which are kind of the good bacteria in your body, or if they fall under commensal bacteria, which are kind of the neutral bacteria that are generally helpful, but at certain kind of conditions can be opportunistic, where they can be kind of bad for you. And then there's the pathogenic kind of bad bacteria in your body. And so we categorize these bacteria for you, and we tell you specifically which types of foods, dietary recommendations, as well as supplement recommendations. And we use natural language processing and machine learning to actually summarize 35,000 research articles to provide all this data for you. And so we've actually mapped about 1,000 plus food ingredients to microbiome data, as well as 500 plus supplements to microbiome data. So we actually have the largest database in the world of mapping the current literature of food ingredients and supplements to microbiome data. And so our test.
Sorry, Richard, to cut you off. You guys use machine learning to essentially assimilate all this.
So the way it works, just to talk about the technology a little bit more, natural language processing is essentially looking at text and summarizing it, and then pulling out kind of the key context and information in literature. But right now it's a semi-automated process, so we actually have PhDs on the team that's manually verifying that the software spits out correct information. Obviously, because computers are still getting the software is still getting there, and so the machine learning is actually the training set that we're building out is getting smarter as it churns out this content. And so that's kind of the machine learning aspect of kind of the NLP that we're working on. But that's the one thing that no other company is doing at this point. All the other microbiome testing companies are throwing PhDs at the problem. And so they're getting, they're hiring a bunch of PhDs to try to summarize all these articles. And as I mentioned that statistic of about 35% year over year growth in terms of the research articles being published. And it's just not scalable because consumers want to know, what do these bacteria do? What can I do about it? And, how does it actually affect my health? And the only way to do that is to get it from the research articles. And you can only scale that through software. And so that's something that we're doing differently.
Okay, we're going to get to your background here in a second, but and I think that'll get us a little bit closer to the software connection. But just before we go any further, there's a lot out there and a lot of skeptics, critics about microbiome testing. Do you mind talking a little bit about the accuracy of the test? Because I know in the early days, and even not that long ago, microbiome testing was a little bit like the Wild Wild West, right? And you can submit 2 microbiome tests from 2 different companies at the same time, and you get completely different results. Now, do you mind commenting on why that may be? Why, or if it's gotten any better, and are the tests getting more and more accurate?
That's a great question. I still think it's still the Wild Wild West. Some of these companies, they're using 2 methods, right? They either use a dry swab, or they use antibiotics in their buffer to lyse the cells. And actually, with both of these methods, the reason why they use antibiotics or antimicrobial agents in their buffer to lyse the cells is because it kills the bacteria on the spot. And when you're shipping your stool sample, depending on the temperature and environment, bacteria can tend to overgrow. And so they use these methods to try to halt the bacteria from growing and causing noise. The unfortunate side of both methods is essentially when you extract the DNA from these kind of these collection buffers, it actually causes a lot of noise in the sequencing process. And so a scientist on our team actually went back to studies in the 1970s. We looked at a bunch of different types of formulation to preserve bacteria, and we came up with our own liquid buffer that keeps the cells in stasis and makes the testing actually 28% more accurate. So we pick up a lot more species and we pick up more depth in the sequencing process. And so I think the reason why you see so many disparities in terms of the testing is, you start from the top of the chain. The testing kit already is flawed with a lot of these different companies. The second part is you actually have to build the right bioinformatics pipeline. And so bioinformatics for your audience to understand is the fancy way of saying, we know how to analyze your genetic data. So when you think about the ribosomal RNA, there's 2 strands, and it's literally the Illumina machines that we use churn out these large 1 gigabyte text files with a bunch of letters like A, T, G, C. But these letters, you're trying to match the publicly known databases. So the NIH, the Human Microbiome Project, Green Genes from Second Genome, and you're trying to match these letters. And when you look at the sequence, you usually get close to 100%, but as close as you can get, you can kind of figure out what bacteria is actually in the body based on kind of the matching. The problem is there's so many different databases and there's so many bacteria that you want to be able to reference all the public databases to get the most accurate information. And so we actually reference multiple databases to get the most accurate result. And so that provides another step in the chain. And then the third one is the lab itself. The lab has to have a controlled process in the way they extract the DNA and the way they do the library prep, the processing, and the sequencing. And so those are the 3 pieces that make kind of the testing and the results the most accurate. Mm-hmm. And so unless you can actually get an insight on how the other companies are doing all 3 of those steps, you don't really know their quality control and their processes to see if the results are actually, accurate and helpful for you. And so we've really thought about that entire process, how to optimize that for the consumer.
Okay. So just going back to the beginning, you have some of these companies that do dry swab testing, which is essentially I take my toilet paper, I swab and just submit it, right? And then the other companies will you take a swab, put it in a solution effectively, and it will kill the bacteria as you send it across. Is that right?
Right.
Do I understand that right?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. And then you guys have gone through and thought through the process in sort of this 3-step formula in a big way, looking all the way into the bioinformatics as well as the quality of your lab, which is pretty awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, we worked really hard to try to do right by the consumer by providing them the right data. So
what led you to start Thryve? Because, you're not a medical background, but you have experience in this field. You have personal experience with the microbiome. Do you mind just sharing for the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So for myself, the reason why I got into this space is because a year and a half ago, I took antibiotics. ended up getting really sick, being hospitalized for a gut infection, actually, from the antibiotic use. And just spurred me on to research kind of what exactly happened to my health, and obviously landed on the microbiome, and found out that, wow, there's actually a lot of people dealing with these kind of chronic health issues. And so I wanted to build a product and a platform that could help consumers understand what was going on with the microbiome and how to improve it. And that's kind of how we started. And so just as a disclaimer, I don't have a biology background. I've been kind of in the software field as a product manager, shipping multi-million-dollar product lines across Fortune 500 public companies as well as private startups. And so with our team, we have a very strong focus in the software side of things, as well as the science. And so we actually brought on a head of R&D recently, ex-co-founder of EpiBiome, Christina Tsai. And we actually have a very strong scientific advisory board as well. And so we have, regulatory advisors from the previous FDA regulatory advisor. We have a disease interaction in the microbiome professor, Timothy Liu from MIT, Dr. Splusky in the food and nutrition department in UC Davis as a professor. And we also think about patient safety very seriously. So Mitesh Rao is another person. He's a chief patient safety officer at Stanford, who's also on our team. And we have several other people on our scientific advisory board to kind of build that expertise around the microbiome.
Okay, so when I think of microbiome testing, there's a number of names that are being floated out there right now, right? And you see a lot of them doing advertising, quite a bit actually. Names like uBiome and Viome, and you don't mean for you to bash your competitors, but what makes Thryve different from uBiome and Viome?
Yeah, that's a great question. No bashing your competitors here, so I don't feel bad at all. But anybody that can help the microbiome.
I feel the same about health. Anybody who pushes that individualized health cause, all for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so to your question about how we're different, there's two things that we're kind of really pushing strong for. Is the personalized probiotic is something that none of the microbiome testing companies currently do. Actually, no other company that I know of at the moment that actually does personalized probiotic based on your microbiome results. And so that's one of our key differentiators with what we're offering. The other side of it is the testing aspect. And so the testing kind of has multiple things about it. The accuracy of the test, like I mentioned, 28% more accurate. We pick up more species. We thought about that entire kind of quality control process as we're collecting the sample. But the other side of it is also the machine learning and NLP and the software side of it, because there's so much content that's going to be coming out, and there's so much content right now in PubMed that these other companies are just hiring, PhDs to try to summarize all this information. Unfortunately, that doesn't scale quick enough. It doesn't bring that information up to date for the consumer. And so because we're using software to bring that content creation process, we have another advantage. We have the largest, as I mentioned, database of food ingredients and supplements mapped to the microbiome. No one else has this kind of data based on our research on all the other product offerings. And so that's something that we're doing differently than you could say uBiome or Viome.
Awesome. Now, one of the things you just mentioned there is your probiotic, and I'm going to hop a little bit on the questions here, but let's talk a little bit about your probiotic, because you said custom probiotic, and that's pretty interesting to me, because I feel like almost all of our clients come in taking some sort of probiotic. It's not always the best one, but how do your probiotics differ? You mentioned you have a custom one based on your microbiome, and how does it compare to some of the other probiotics out there? The ones that immediately come to mind are something like a VSL3, which I believe is now called Phyromax in the European Union. But just any sort of commentary you're willing to give on your probiotics is awesome.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, with companies like VSL3 or Renew Life or all these companies, it's a one size fits all, right? It's the same 8 strains or, 5 strains, same CFU counts across the board. Nothing is personalized. And so that's something that we're obviously doing differently. You could say that our CFU counts and our strains are, or at least the CFU counts are relatively the same, 100 billion. But we always think about kind of the entire process of the probiotic. And one thing we quickly realized, and kind of the research also points to this, is about 94% of the probiotics off the shelf actually don't contain what's advertised. And that's very interesting because what we do in the kind of quality control process is we double test our probiotics in manufacturing and in bottling to ensure that the CFU counts, the strains, and that there's no kind of pathogenic microorganisms that have been kind of added in the shipping and handling process. And so we think about that just to ensure that what we advertise is legitimate. We also ship our probiotics on ice conveniently to your house every month.
Thank you so much for that, by the way.
Absolutely. And just to add some color on that, the reason why we ship it on ice is because, bacteria are living, they're living cells. And so depending on the temperature, they could die during the transportation process. And so we always ship it on ice in an insulated box, and just to preserve the bacteria. So the CFU counts as well as the strains that get to you are all as advertised. And so we work very hard on kind of the shipping and handling process, as well as providing the personalization, the customization. And I had another point. When we were doing our research on probiotics in the market, we quickly realized about 2/3 of the probiotics in the U.S. market actually all come from 1 or 2 suppliers, one of them being DuPont. And so the strain library is actually very, very low if you think about it. A lot of the probiotics are just marketed differently, different branding, different color, different design, but it's all essentially the same ingredients. And so we actually worked with a company called Symbiotech that has a larger library, more research, published research, a pending exclusive partnership with them to offer this personalized probiotic to the U.S. market, and something that's currently not offered anywhere else. And so we're really proud to say that we've thought about that entire process of the probiotic and how it differs from the competition. So,
you mind if I turn a little bit into the gut health kit? And I have mine on my screen right now, but do you mind just walking somebody through a little bit on what they're going to receive when they get the gut health kit?
Okay, gotcha. So when you do the gut health test, just from a kind of user experience point of view, the customer, signs up online. In about 2 to 3 business days, you receive the kit in the mail, and then you sample a little piece of your stool, send it off, and in about 2 weeks, you get results back. And in those results, we have kind of an overview of your health. 2 weeks, yeah. 2 to 3 weeks turnaround time.
Okay,
yeah.
That's a good turnaround time. Okay,
exactly. Yeah. So to your point, other competitors usually take 4 to maybe even up to 6 months to get your results back. Sometimes
maybe a little longer. Yeah,
maybe a little bit. Sometimes you don't even get it back, right? You don't hear back from them at all. So, so you get your results back. We have an overview. We give you a wellness score, and this is your kind of overall score of your health. And the way we calculate that is based on the diversity of your gut. So how rich and even are the species in your gut, and we also look at the ratios of your probiotic commensals and pathogenic bacteria. And we also look at different kind of markers in your overall kind of microbiome health to give you that wellness score. We also tell you about all the different bacteria you're deficient in. So if your probiotics, we give you the top 15 probiotics in your body that you're low in compared to the general healthy population. And then we also tell you about the overgrowth of bad bacteria. So if compared to the healthy population. And then that in turn actually turned into the recommendations. So we say, here's all the different food ingredients that you should eat to increase the missing probiotics in your body. And we provide these kind of prebiotics, which are fibers that feed the good bacteria in your body as recommendations. And we also provide supplements as well to improve that. And we talk about how these recommendations can lower the bad bacteria as well. And so you get all this rich kind of information. You can also search all the different bacteria that we've curated. So you can know about the thousands of species of bacteria in your body, all their health benefits, all the scientific resources attached to them. We also tell you about the research confidence of those scientific articles. So all the metadata associated with, are they human clinical studies? Were they mice studies? How long were the studies? What was the sample size of those studies? And then we curate all that information for you so you can make an informed decision on your health.
Yeah, I have to comment just for the audience. I've gone down the microbiome wormhole with you guys, and I've spent days reading some of the research that comes out of the results of this test. So, great way of presenting it. And I also have to comment that I love the recipes, recipes that you guys provide, things like kimchi meatballs, which I may have tonight.
All right, there you go.
Squash cacciatore. And then the one thing that sounded tempting, but I haven't hit you guys on it yet, is the chicken ramen, just because
nice.
a noodle will probably knock me out. But overall, it's a good presentation, and I think it's done in a way that most people who are unfamiliar with microbiome bacteria can understand it.
Awesome. Glad to hear it.
Okay, so I think just sort of wrapping things up, Richard, and this has been extremely helpful, and thank you for giving everyone an overview of microbiome testing and specifically what you guys do. But Thryve specifically, if they want to learn more, where can they find you? Because obviously, you're a busy CEO. Where can they find out more about Thryve and, what you guys are doing? And perhaps you want to touch a little bit on the future of Thryve.
Sure, absolutely. So you can find us online. We're at www.thryveinside.com. That's THRYVE inside.com. If you'd like to shoot me an email directly, I'm always open to hearing from customers and anybody interested in the microbiome. So you can email me at richard@thryveinside.com. Also, we offer new customers a 30% discount with probiotics 30 at checkout if you like to, try our service.
So that's probiotics just spelled out 30, because I know there's going to be some few people that are going to want to hit you on that.
Yeah, so probiotics 30, no spaces, all together as one word. And just kind of the future of Thryve. Yeah, that's a great question. So, we've been thinking really hard about how do we get consumers to really optimize their gut health. And so we've been thinking about different areas of including our therapeutics. So we may eventually have a food line infused with kind of customized probiotics based on your profile. I can't touch too much more into that, but we're looking in areas for that. And so that's a very exciting way for us to go as well. We're looking at different kind of body parts, not just the gut. We have a lot of customers with skin issues that we know there's a huge microbial reference there. And so we're building out and looking into those areas as well. And so I'm very excited about that. We're going to continue to, push forward, build the right product for our customers, all the way from the testing to the recommendations and to the actual actionable insights and recommendations. And so look forward to it and keep on the lookout for us.
Yeah. Talk about a cliffhanger there, Richard. Thryve Foods, here we come. Awesome. Well, Richard, thank you so much for joining. This has been extremely informative. My personal mission is to push this world of individualized health to everyone, because after all, we're unique. We now have the testing available to take action on our uniqueness. And, technologies like Thryve make that possible. So, thank you for joining us here today. And to all the superhumans out there, thank you for listening. And Richard, we'll be in touch soon. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Boomer. Goodbye, superhumans.
Take care, guys. Have a good one.
All right. See you guys. Bye.
Hey guys, it's Boomer Anderson here. Just one more quick thing before we go. If you really liked what you heard today, can you go over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review? Not only would it help us launch the Decoding Superhuman podcast, but it would also help us spread the word about precision health all around the world. If you can go over to iTunes right now and leave a 5-star review, it's really appreciated. Thanks again for listening, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.